Hello everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 30th June 2025 and today we have some very important and very interesting topics for the discussion. So one by one we'll try to discuss all these important topics in an in-depth and detailed manner. And in fact, the PDF of this particular class is also available in the description section. And you can directly access the link and download this class PDF as well. So without any further delay, let's get into the discussion. And the first topic with which we're going to start this session is about the Western Ghats conservation. And this is important for mains examination and prelims examination also, because in the past, previously UPSC has asked about the Western Ghats in prelims examination, particularly Western Ghats distributed across which of the following states, and which of the following committees have been appointed for the Western Ghats conservation, right? So such questions are already asked by UPSC. And in fact, if there are any new species findings in Western Ghats, and that is also very important from exam point of view. For mains examination also, Western Ghats are very important. Western Ghats conservation, biodiversity, and in fact Western Ghats are also the biodiversity hotspot, and because of all these reasons, so this is a very important topic. And this article has been given in the Hindu newspaper. Now what is the context and why this article has been given? So this article has been given that recently ecologist Madhav Gadgil has urged for a community-centric approach. Now what is a community-centric approach? Now in fact, when we talk about the conservation of biodiversity, we always talk about the community-centric approach because it is more inclusive and sustainable in nature. And that is the reason that the community-centric approach has been suggested for the conservation of Western Ghats, because it will give more inclusive and sustainable results when it comes to the conservation of the biodiversity in the Western Ghats. And in fact, the ecologist Madhav Gadgil, so he also suggested that the forest bureaucracy has also failed when it comes to the conservation of the Western Ghats. And in fact, the Forest Rights Act implementation is also neglected in the Western Ghats. So therefore, he cited the failure of the forest bureaucracy and the neglect of the Forest Rights Act implementation in the Western Ghats, and now it is important that we need to undertake a community-centric approach for safeguarding the biodiversity in the Western Ghats. And on this map, you can clearly see the Western Ghats as well as the Eastern Ghats. And the Western Ghats spread across different states including Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So in all these different states, Western Ghats distributed. And you should also understand the differences between the Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats as well, because in General Studies paper 2 of your mains examination, there is a probability of asking the differences between the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. So in another lecture, we'll understand the differences between the Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats. Now, when we talk about the Western Ghats conservation, now understand one thing: Western Ghats are a World Heritage Site. Right? So Western Ghats are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and in fact it is also the biodiversity hotspot as well. And in fact, the Western Ghats stretch along the western edge of the Deccan Plateau. Right? And in fact, Western Ghats also play a very important role influencing Indian monsoon and also sustaining rich biodiversity ecosystem as well, because Western Ghats are itself known for a very rich biodiversity. And in fact, the windward side of the Western Ghats would receive excessive rainfall, and the windward side of the Western Ghats would also experience high heavy rainfall along with high biodiversity as well. And as I have already told you that these Western Ghats spread across the following states including Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And this is also important because UPSC has already asked a question on this factor. Now what are the key features of the Western Ghats? And if you understand the key features, we will understand the need to conserve the biodiversity and the ecology of the Western Ghats. So firstly, Western Ghats supports rich biodiversity because Western Ghats hosts around 7,400 species. And in fact, Western Ghats are also known for rich endemism. Now, what is endemism? Now, any species which specifically found in those Western Ghats. So those species are not found anywhere else. They specifically found in Western Ghats alone. So those species are called as endemism. Now, Western Ghats are home to both flora and fauna endemic species. Right? So if I can tell you one example of endemic species of Western Ghats is Nilgiri Thar. So Nilgiri Thar is known as endemic species of the Western Ghats because Nilgiri Thar very often found in Shola forests of Western Ghats. And a Neelakurinji flowering plant. And this Neelakurinji flowering plant, so that actually flowers once in a 12 years. So that is also endemic to the Western Ghats. So therefore it is known for a very high endemism, both flora and fauna. And we need to understand the hydrological importance of the Western Ghats as well. Now when we talk about the hydrological importance, so the origin of rivers, major rivers from the Western Ghats. For example, if you look at the peninsular part of India, most of the major rivers, whether it is Krishna, Ganga, Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri, Penna. So all these major rivers, see, they originate from the Western Ghats. So therefore they are very, very important for the water security of the peninsular part of India. But in northern part of India, so most of the rivers are perennial rivers, right? So but in the southern part of India, most of the rivers are the seasonal rivers, right? They are not perennial rivers, right? So perennial rivers are Brahmaputra, Sindhu, so these are the perennial rivers. Ganga is also a perennial river. Now, Western Ghats also play a very important role when it comes to influencing the climate because Western Ghats are known to trap the monsoon winds. So therefore, because of that reason, the windward side of the Western Ghats would receive heavy rainfall, right? So however, the leeward side, the other side of the Western Ghats is known as a rain shadow region. So we have to understand this. So therefore, the windward side of the Western Ghats creates a heavy rainfall and it also acts as a climate regulator as well. But on the other hand, the leeward side is called as the rain shadow region, receives a very less rainfall and a drought-like conditions are experienced in the leeward side of the Western Ghats. Now we'll have to talk about the topographic diversity as well. And in fact, the Western Ghats are home to, or they're composed of, lateritic plateaus and escarpments, valleys, peaks like Anaimodi, so which is around 2695 meters, right? So Western Ghats are known for rich biodiversity and they also have a huge hydrological role and they also influence the climate, they also moderate the climate and they also have the topographic diversity as well. However, now some issues have been plaguing the Western Ghats. So we'll be understanding what are the issues which have been specifically plaguing the Western Ghats. Now in fact, the problem, one such problem that has been plaguing the conservation of biodiversity in the Western Ghats is having outdated or inflated data. So since we have a outdated and inflated data and that data will not be suitable for the conservation of the Western Ghats biodiversity. So in fact, as I have already as I always stresses on evidence-based and data-driven policy making, and this evidence-based data-driven policy making will help identify the potential areas, so therefore we can specifically target those areas, right? So outdated and inflated data about the Western Ghats conservation efforts is a main problem because that has been limiting the overall transparency and the ecological planning as well. And another major problem that the Western Ghats have been facing is the polluting industries. And many of these polluting industries have been indiscriminately releasing effluents into the environment, so thereby polluting the entire ecologically sensitive zone of the Western Ghats. And in fact, it is very often backed by the state support, and there is also a no accountability of these polluting industries. And thereby, these polluting industries have been destroying the sensitive nature of the Western Ghats. Now, one such example is Grasim Rayon factory. And this Grasim Rayon factory are discharging toxic mercury into the Chaliar river. And in fact, this toxic mercury into the Chaliar river has been destroying the fishery population and the tribal livelihoods as well, those tribals who are dependent on the fisheries. Right? So therefore, polluting industries across the Western Ghats is also posing another major threat. The third major issue that the Western Ghats have been facing is non-implementation of the Forest Rights Act. We all knew that the Forest Rights Act has been framed in the year 2006. But the problem is of poor implementation or non-implementation of the Forest Rights Act. Now, as of now, many tribal and forest dependent communities in Western Ghats, they continue to be denied the forest and the community forest rights. Right? So despite they are having legal entitlements, so they were denied the community forest rights. So therefore, there is a need to immediately implement the Forest Rights Act in the Western Ghats. And apart from that, the forest lands are also diverted for the cultivation of trees like eucalyptus and acacia. And in fact, the eucalyptus and acacia very often harm the native biodiversity, and it also erodes the soil health as well, thereby destroying the entire Western Ghats ecosystem and the fragile nature of the environment in the Western Ghats. Now, another major problem that the Western Ghats have been facing is inaccessible aggregated forest data. And in fact, the Forest Survey of India, it actually provides delayed and district level data. And in fact, it also hides the local level forest degradation. The local level forest degradation data is also very important to understand the level of deforestation or forest degradation. So thereby, appropriate measures would be put in place. And apart from that, we need to understand there are some committees which were appointed by the government to study the Western Ghats, right? So the pristine and fragile nature of the Western Ghats, and also suggest some reforms so that we could actually protect and conserve the Western Ghats and its biodiversity. The first important committee is the Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel 2011. And this Western Ghats Ecology Expert Panel has been led by Madhav Gadgil. And it has recommended the ecological sensitive areas zoning and the community forest reserves implementation, and in fact the Gram Sabha led conservation or the community centric conservation. And in the year 2013 also, another committee that has been appointed by the government, which is the Kasturi Rangan committee, and this committee has favored the development friendly approach. So there should be development, but that development should not destroy or damage the fragile nature of the Western Ghats. And in fact, it has even reduced the ecologically sensitive area coverage, because the Madhav Gadgil committee has demarcated a huge area as a ecologically sensitive area, and because of that reason there was a huge restriction on the developmental activities. But the Kasturi Rangan panel has reduced this ecologically sensitive area coverage and diluting people's participation in the governance process. Right? So these are the two important committees that were appointed by the government in the year 2011 and 2013 for the conservation and protection of the Western Ghats. Now, what should be the way forward? How can we protect and conserve the Western Ghats? Now, in fact, the first problem that we have to discuss is that the Forest Rights Act is not properly implemented. Right? So since Forest Rights Act is not implemented and community forest rights are also not given to the people who are living in the Western Ghats. And in fact, these committees are also suggesting a community-centric approach, a people-centric approach. So therefore, recognizing the community forest resources, and it will empower the local communities economically and ecologically. Right? So because the community forest resources would give them the ownership rights, and it would also give them the responsibility. So thereby, It adequately empowers the local communities economically as well as ecologically. And democratic decentralization. So what does democratic decentralization actually means? Giving more powers to the panchayats or the gram sabhas. Now, democratic decentralization will empower the gram sabhas, and the people will collectively make decisions about the community forest resources and protection and conservation of the Western Ghats biodiversity. And apart from that, it also ensures that the local knowledge and accountability in that forest conservation as well. So therefore, democratic decentralization should be given the priority. And the other problem, another major problem that we have been facing when it comes to the conservation of the ecosystem in the Western Ghats is a lack of data. So we don't have the data. Even if we have the data, so that data is outdated. So therefore, we need to use a real-time open access satellite tools such as Google Earth or Bowen, because it will help monitor the forest health, and it also monitors the changes that have been regularly taking place. And in fact, the Global Forest Watch now actually provides 30-meter resolution data, and this 30-meter resolution data can be used to counter the false Forest Survey of India's claims. And fourth is a ban on unsustainable industrial activities, because we have just understood that the polluting industries located across the Western Ghats are a major threat to the Western Ghats' fragile nature. So therefore, there should be a ban on unsustainable industrial activities. And in fact, so in order to ensure that, we need to enforce the Supreme Court mandated mining bans in wildlife corridors and the fragile ecosystems, because that will avoid the irreversible biodiversity loss, and it will also ensure the conservation and protection of the Western Ghats ecosystem. And we need to promote biodiversity compatible livelihoods as well. So in order to do so, we need to encourage non-timber forest produce based enterprises, ecological tourism, agroforestry. So all these things must align with the income generation with the conservation, right? So it just these activities should not just focus on income generation, but they should also focus on the conservation of the Western Ghats. So therefore, we need to promote the biodiversity compatible livelihoods of the people, and all these factors are the biodiversity compatible livelihoods, right? So this is the way forward. I hope you have understood this topic, and even if you have any doubts, so just feel free to comment those doubts, and we'll answer those questions as well. And next topic is Election Commission of India's delisting of the political parties. Recently, Election Commission of India has undertaken a series of measures to delist political parties which are inactive, and we'll be understanding the context of this particular topic, and we'll also understand the powers of the Election Commission of India to deregister the political parties. And this article has been given in the Indian Express newspaper, and this is important for your General Studies paper 2, Indian Polity Constitution part. Now in fact, recently the Election Commission of India and Election Commission of India under Article 324 of the Indian Constitution, it is a constitutional body, right? So in fact, it is a constitutional authority, and it plans to delist around 345 registered political parties but unrecognized political parties, which are also called as RUPPs, right? So they are registered but unrecognized political parties for not contesting elections in 6 years as part of a cleanup drive to enhance the electoral integrity. So there are political parties which are registered but they are unrecognized political parties, right? And in fact, these registered and unrecognized political parties can go for financial irregularities as well. So therefore, we need to identify those political parties, and it is also important to deregister those political parties, right? So these are RUPPs which are not contesting elections in 6 years as part of the cleanup drive to enhance the electoral integrity. And in fact, these political parties are found inactive or they are largely untraceable, right? So they are largely untraceable at their registered addresses, thereby raising concerns about the legitimacy of registered political parties. And in fact, they are registered, but they are largely inactive in last 6 years. And therefore, they have raised certain concerns about the legitimacy of these registered political entities. And in fact, the action from the Election Commission of India to curb the tax evasion and the symbol misuse, and even to prevent the rise of letterpad parties, which are also called as fake parties, which have no intention of contesting elections, which have no intention to go into the people. So those political parties are called as letterpad parties. And this action from the Election Commission of India is to curb tax evasion, symbol misuse, which are often involved in financial irregularities, and they are also even undermining the democratic norms. Now we'll understand the registration rules and the registered and unrecognized political party benefits. So what are the benefits that these registered but unrecognized political parties would get? And in fact, forming a political party. Now when we talk about the constitutional basis, forming a political party is considered as a right under Article 19, Clause 1 and Subclause C. So therefore, this is a right under the Indian Constitution. And in fact, parties must undergo the political party registration under Section 29A of the Representation of People Act 1951. So if they wanted to contest elections, so every political party must register with the Section 29A of the Representation of People Act 1951. Only then they will be allowed to contest elections. And all these registered political parties must uphold the constitutional values. So whatever values which are enshrined in the Constitution, which are enshrined in the preamble, so these political parties must uphold these constitutional values, and also ensure the inner party democracy and conduct regular elections to maintain their status, right? So they have to contest elections regularly, and these political parties must have the inner party democracy as well, right? So every political party has a hierarchy, right? So even though these political parties have a hierarchy, there should be an inner party democracy, so that every member of that political party will get a proper a leadership role, a proper opportunity. Now what are the key benefits of these registered but unrecognized political parties? So they enjoy a set of benefits. The first benefit is that the income tax exemption, right? So there is a possibility that since these registered unrecognized political parties enjoy income tax exemptions, so they might have set up these political parties to channelize their funds to exempt their income from the income tax, right? Under Section 13A of IT Act. So they are, it provides a significant financial advantages to the registered political parties because their funds are exempted from the income tax, right? So this is the first advantage that the registered but unrecognized political parties will enjoy. Secondly, common election symbols allocation, right? So common election symbol allocation will further enhance party recognition and also visibility during the elections. So there will be a separate symbol that will be allocated for that particular political party. And in fact, these political parties will also get a permission to appoint 20 star campaigners, and thereby further boosting campaign visibility and their reach as well. And these star campaigners, so they play a crucial role in attracting voters and even promoting parties' overall agenda, or taking parties' agenda deep into the people. And apart from that, there will be various campaign funding benefits to support the electoral activities of these political parties. And in fact, parties must report donations about 20,000 and accept 2,000 only via bank or check to meet a donation transparency requirements. So these are the benefits that the registered and unrecognized political parties will actually enjoy. However, here the Election Commission of India is actually lacking power to deregister the political parties, and there are also certain gaps which are existing in delisting the process. And in fact, the Supreme Court in the year 2002, right? So as per the Supreme Court 2002, the Election Commission of India, despite being a constitutional authority under Article 324 of the Indian Constitution, so it cannot deregister the political parties unless they committed fraud, or they become unconstitutional, or they declared unlawful, except in exceptional circumstances. Now, only under exceptional circumstances, the Election Commission of India can deregister a political party. So, unless unless any political party is not committing any fraud, any unconstitutional thing, or if they are not declared unlawful, then Election Commission of India is not having any power to deregister the political parties. And this limitation actually highlights that there is a need for a legislative change to empower the Election Commission of India even to deregister the political parties as well. And in India, we have around 2,800 registered but unrecognized political parties. But among all those political parties, only 750 have contested elections in 2024 general elections. Right? So that means remaining all other 2,050 registered and unrecognized political parties have not contested elections. Right? So in fact, many of these registered and unrecognized political parties have not submitted the mandatory updates on leadership since 2014, and thereby highlighting the inner party democracy deficit among all these registered but unrecognized political parties. So therefore, a set of reforms have been suggested. And what other reforms have been suggested? Now, Law Commission has recommended in its 255th report to deregister a political party if a party fails to contest elections for at least 10 years. Right? This is what the Law Commission has recommended. And secondly, the Election Commission of India in its 2016 proposals, so it has also suggested to amend the Representation of People Act to allow the Election Commission of India to deregister the political parties and also enforce the inner party democracy among these political parties. And in fact, the chief electoral officers in several states, they have already expressed the concern about the proliferation of these inactive, registered but unrecognized political parties as letterpad parties. So therefore, there are concerns with respect to the registered and unrecognized political parties largely remaining inactive, and they are not contesting elections. And they may go for the financial irregularities as well. So therefore, there is a significant need for the Election Commission of India should be empowered with the power to deregister these political parties. And the next important topic is recently Maharashtra has decided to scrap a new 3-language policy. Now, what exactly is this a 3-language policy? Now, we'll be understanding about this. Now, in fact, a 3-language policy is an educational policy which promotes the use of a regional language along with English and Hindi. So that is a 3-language policy. Many of the southern states have been implementing the 3-language policy. For example, if we take Andhra Pradesh as an example, so Telugu is a 1 language. Along with that, English and Hindi will also be taught. So this is a 3-language policy. But because of sustained protests in the state of Maharashtra, so the government has decided to scrap this 3-language policy for classes 1 to 5. Now, Maharashtra government has scrapped the 3-language policy for classes 1 to 5 after 2 months of a sustained public opposition. And in fact, this move faced resistance from the academics and activists and even the ruling coalition partners like National Conference Party. And in fact, a committee led by Narendra Yadav will review a policy's future and also the implementation timeline as well. Now, in this context, what are the concerns which are expressed about the 3-language policy and the public reaction on this? And it is going to have a massive impact because the policy would have affected nearly 80 lakh students in Marathi and English medium schools. And opposition, such as political parties like Shiv Sena, UBT and MNS, so they have called this rollback of a 3-language policy as a victory for Marathi unity, but criticized the committee's credibility as well. And in fact, a protest has also been called against this 3-language formula, and this protest has been cancelled because on July 5th there was a major rally that has been planned, and it will now be held as a celebratory march by the people. Now, when we talk about the controversy of this 3-language formula in the state of Maharashtra, so people have started accusing or criticizing the government for pushing Hindustan narrative through a language policy. And in fact, experts even questioned the need for a committee instead of a clear withdrawal of the policy. Yes, it is true that the government has withdrawn this 3-language formula, but the government has even appointed a committee that how long we should not implement the 3-language formula. So that is Dr. Jadav's expert committee. However, activists who have been strongly opposing this 3-language formula expressed doubts about the Dr. Jadav's expertise, and they even warned of protests if the policy is again reintroduced. Now, what is this 3-language formula? So, this 3-language formula has been introduced under the National Policy on Education for the first time in the year 1968. So, therefore, we can actually promote the language harmony in India. Now, what is the structure of this 3-language formula? Now, this 3-language formula will include mother tongue. So, in this case, it is Marathi and Hindi. Along with that, English will also be taught. So, this is the 3-language formula. However, it is not free from the implementation issues because there are a number of implementation issues as well. It varies across states, and some states oppose it, citing cultural imposition and the regional sensitivities as well. States like Tamil Nadu have never implemented the 3-language formula. However, the National Education Policy 2020 supports the 3-language formula, but it allows the flexibility based on states' preferences. However, the debate over the 3-language formula or imposition of Hindi further continues. So therefore, in this context, balancing national integration with the linguistic diversity remains a policy challenge that the government have to navigate. I hope you have understood the 3-language formula as well. So if you have any doubts on this, so you can comment those doubts in the comment section. We are free to address all your doubts, and thank you so much.